You know what I hate about Street Fighter? I just realized this after playing the story mode for Tekken 8, and maybe I've always hated this about Street Fighter, but just never truly realized it until now. These characters in the world of Street Fighter really don't have anything going on, really don't have a whole lot of interaction and story with each other, or at the very least, we don't really get to see it or experience it, you know? I think this is definitely the case with Street Fighter 6, because for some reason, what they decided to do with Street Fighter 6 is get rid of a cinematic type of story mode, which we had in 5, along with all those other like individual character story modes and an arcade ending for each character, which also gave a little bit of insight into their story between the different entries in the franchise. Instead, we got the World Tour mode, which focuses all on your created character avatar. And you can interact with some of the characters in the world of Street Fighter with your avatar. The World Tour mode really sucks. I hate it. I hate it so much. I can kind of understand the idea and the concept and what they're going for. Almost reminds me of Dragon Ball Xenoverse, where you kind of like make your own character and you can train under the different characters in Dragon Ball, and you know, they can become your master, right? And you know, that's cool, like I get it, but I just feel like, I don't know if that necessarily belongs in the realm of competitive fighting games. Like I could see that as like a cool thing to do single player, like on the side, but I feel like they put a little bit too much focus into it and forgot about what we actually care about as fans of Street Fighter. You know, the characters, their story, getting costumes for them, you know, being able to use characters from the actual roster, not just getting more content for our avatars, right? And I can understand somewhat the argument of Capcom's side of like, well, people don't really care about stories in fighting games anyway, or maybe after the Street Fighter 5 story mode, people said, oh, it wasn't that good. So they're like, all right, fuck it. We're not gonna waste time with a Street Fighter story mode anymore. We're just gonna make it something like this that's a little bit interactive and something you can do outside of just fighting in ranked and stuff like that. And I can kind of understand that. I can kind of see where they are coming from. But the problem is, like, again, you're kind of neglecting an actual good story for the characters in your world. And to me, the part that pisses me off is you play a game like Tekken 8, you see how cool and badass the lore is between Jin and Kazuya, Heihachi, all these characters, like, and how cool it is to see Kazuya like have to be taken down by everybody. Like it's so fucking cool, man. Like it's so cool. We got like, you know, these little interactions between Victor and Raven, like stuff like that is just fucking cool. You know, it adds so much life into the world of Tekken, bro. Like having a good story for your characters in your fighting game adds so much depth, because then you can, like, for example, every time if I use Jin and I fight a Kazuya, it's like, oh shit, it's a lore battle, it's a canon battle, you know, there's layers to it. But if I pick Ryu and I fight Luke, there's nothing there. You get the same intro that you would any other day. Like it's just, it makes me so mad because there's nothing to care about in the world of Street Fighter. In Tekken, there's actual cool characters, but there's lore, there's story behind them to back it up, and you play through that story mode in the games. So you get to feel the hype, you get to experience something so cool. Like that final battle between Jin and Kazuya, when they fall down from the meteor, like, oh bro, that was so sick. That was so sick, bro. And it's like, I have that in my mind as something I experienced and was a part of. And it just, oh man, it got me really into just Tekken and how cool these characters are, how cool the world and the lore is. And I feel like I've never had that with Street Fighter, but I do think the characters in Street Fighter are cool. Like Juri is my favorite Street Fighter character, one of my favorite characters in video games, period. And I love her story. I love a lot of the things that she's done in the world of Street Fighter. I love the fact that her and Seth have had kind of this battle, and Seth losing to Juri in Street Fighter 4 made him steal her body as like a blueprint for his next body, which he came in Street Fighter 5 with. I think that's so fucking cool. But what would have been really sick is if we actually got to see that, if we actually got to play a story mode where we saw that happen. You know what I'm saying? It's like a lot of the lore that is really cool about Street Fighter. You kind of have to read somewhere either outside of the game or, you know, kind of make your own conclusions with, you know, all of the text that's been there or that's given. It's almost like Street Fighter, you're reading a novel, but in Tekken and Mortal Kombat, you're reading a comic book or you're watching a movie, you know? And again, there's nothing wrong with reading novels, stuff like that. I guess that's a kind of bad example, but even then, it's not just about the fact that Mortal Kombat and Tekken give us a better presentation to a story mode that we can experience. You know, I really love what they did with Street Fighter V in that cinematic story mode, but I also still feel like there wasn't a whole lot there with the characters and like how they kind of interact with each other. Like, it was cool to see Ibuki and Karin, you know, have some interaction. It was cool to see Armika and Geef, you know, have their little interaction, right? Like, that's cool. But what I really want from Street Fighter and what pisses me off that Street Fighter doesn't have is some actual like rivalry, some actual like grit, some actual reasoning for why they fight each other. You know, like Tekken has its King of the Iron Fist, right? Why doesn't Street Fighter have like a, you know, best fighter in the world title that people actually gather from around the world to fight for? And another thing that really pisses me off that makes it so blatant is when they try to force Luke down our throats as being this new face of Street Fighter, being the new main character of Street Fighter. It's like, who the fuck is Luke? Why the fuck should I care about Luke? Like, there's nothing interesting about him at all. And he has no relation to Ryu, who he's apparently supposed to be replacing. So why should I care about Luke? There's nothing interesting about him in the world of Street Fighter. So why make him the poster boy of Street Fighter, you know? And it's not like there's nothing interesting going on in the world of Street Fighter, but I just feel like Street Fighter doesn't do a great job of showing what's going on. Like I said, you know, the whole thing with Juri, she has a really cool story. She has a lot going on. But if we're talking about main characters in Street Fighter, like Ryu, Luke, they seem kind of boring, kind of lame. And to be honest, there's not a ton of reason to actually like them. Like, again, I'm not trying to diss on Ryu. That's the boy, you know, that's the Adam, as in Adam and Eve of all fighting games to me. But I feel like the only reason I kind of look at Ryu and I kind of like him, or at least look at him in a good light, is because of the respect. It's the nostalgia. It's, you know, that's the poster boy of all fighting games to me. But what if he actually had a really cool and interesting fucking story behind him? You know, what if he trained for years and years and years to be the best and won the title as, you know, the greatest fighter in the world, right? What if he got his ass kicked by someone before him, right? Let's say Gouken, right? And he was like, you know what? I'm gonna disappear for 5 years, come back and be the best fighter in the world. Beat everybody, beat Gouken, and everybody knew his name as the best fighter in the world. Then everybody wants to come for him and challenge Ryu to be that guy, you know, to be the next grand champion, to be the next best fighter in the world. Like, how cool would that be? How cool would it be if there were actual stakes in Street Fighter? You know, like, yeah, there's this whole Bison and him trying to take over the world, but it never really feels like there's actual stakes on the line. It feels like Bison is a very, you know, classic gloom and doom villain that just never has any real merit, right? And I think that's just because we don't ever have anything on the line with Street Fighter. You know what I mean? It just feels like, hey, Ryu and the gang take on evil bad guys, but like, why do we care? We don't really have a reason to care. And I think there's just not enough like rivalry going on between the fighters themselves. I feel like we're stuck in this ideology in Street Fighter of good versus evil, with like Bison being the evil, that we don't have a reason to care for the characters individually, right? Like, how cool would it be if we had an actual tournament arc in Street Fighter, you know, similar to how they do with the Mortal Kombat tournament or the King of Iron Fist tournament in Tekken, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know you can argue that it's cliche tournament arcs in fighting games, and I guess in anime, but I feel like the reason that tournament arcs in anime and fighting games kind of work out is because they work. You know, they're cliche for a reason, because they work. And I feel like if Street Fighter had something like that, it would be so much saucier. You know, in comparison to Tekken, right? Ryu and Jin. I feel like Jin and Ryu are both kind of, you know, they're on that main protagonist energy, right? But I feel like the difference is at least Jin has a fucking story to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, he's on that main protagonist anime energy, and that's obviously not for everybody. It can feel a little bit bland and boring at times, but at least there's a story to him. There's a story behind him. We get to see his whole battle with Kazuya, everything he has going on with his mother Jun, with Xiaoyu, with Heihachi. Like, there's just so much to this character. His rivalry with Hwoarang, the whole thing with him and Miguel, like, there's just so much going on. And it's like, why doesn't Ryu have that, bro? Like, all we really know about Ryu is he has a rivalry with Ken, and that's cool, right? He also has like rivalries with Sagat and Akuma, but I feel like because we never see a story mode showcasing that rivalry, or we never have like character specific intros with Ryu and Sagat or Ryu and Ken in the more recent Street Fighters, it's just the same intro every time. I feel like we just don't get that. We don't feel that, you know? And that's what bothers me. That's what really bothers me about Street Fighter. I feel like they could have so much going on, but they just don't. Like, we see the artwork of Luke versus Ryu, and that looks cool as fuck. The artwork is amazing, but there's nothing actually there behind that artwork. There's no story behind that artwork. And they act like there is something there, but there's not. You know, they could have gave us something in Street Fighter 6 to give that artwork some depth, some layers, but they gave us that trash World Tour mode instead. You know, they could have gave us something really simple, right? They could make it like DBZ, where the different villains in Street Fighter like Gil and Seth just want to destroy the world every single game, and the fighters kind of like got to band together to defeat them. And I think even that would be cool, just to see the fighters have to interact with each other more often, you know, or better yet, make Gil and Seth try to be the champion. Like, make Street Fighter have a champion that kind of dictates how things go in the world in some way, and make Gil and Seth try to become that champion. Things get out of hand, and then it becomes like a Goku and friends fight life-threatening threat to save the world. You know what I mean? But make all the fighters from around the world actually compete for something. Because right now it feels like they just randomly fight each other, and they have no actual ties to each other the way that Tekken characters actually do. And we see that. Not just Tekken, but we also see that in Mortal Kombat a lot. Like, say what you will about those games, but Mortal Kombat and Tekken and a lot of other fighting games have done such a better job of making their characters, making their world actually have ties to each other. And yet Street Fighter is somehow still like the biggest, most iconic fighting game, but it like doesn't do this. You know, like, imagine if we see this artwork of Luke and Ryu, right? Like hating each other, fighting each other. Imagine if Ryu was the top dog. He was the champion of the world of Street Fighter. He was the best fighter in the world. Nobody could beat him. Everybody tried, but nobody can beat him. He's the #1. And then Luke comes out of nowhere, right? He steals Ken's wife. Ken goes into hiding, and Luke beats the fuck out of Ryu, beats his ass. And Luke is like such a cocky bastard. He's talking all this shit, but yet nobody can beat him. He's literally just the strongest guy. Like, imagine how fucking cool that would be, bro. Like, imagine he's just a cocky asshole that beats the fuck out of Ryu and talks so much shit, and you kind of like have to respect him because he is the strongest, like in that point of time, like in the world of Street Fighter, you know? Like, that would be so fucking cool. You know, and that's all it takes. That's literally all it takes. Just a simple little bit of writing into these stories of these characters and make them interact with each other, you know? Like, that's all it takes, bro. Literally all it takes. And the fact that it takes so little, and that I could just randomly think of that idea off the top of my head, that would make Street Fighter 6, Street Fighter in general, 100 times more cooler than it is right now, is the reason why I kind of hate Street Fighter, or the thing I hate about Street Fighter right now. Like, it literally takes just a simple thing to make this franchise 10 times better and actually give a reasoning behind forcing Luke down our throats. But for some reason, Capcom just hasn't done it, and it's got me thinking. So that's kind of why I wanted to make this video and rant about it, because I think Like it's just right there. The potential is right there, you know? But yeah, I'm curious like what you guys think. If you guys agree with me on this, or do you think things should stay the same? I mean, I could be wrong, obviously. I'm not right about everything. My opinion isn't the law, but like, I don't know. I've been thinking about it lately, and man, I really feel like the world of Street Fighter could be elevated so much with just a little bit of story, a little bit more to tie these characters together, like the way Tekken and Mortal Kombat does it. But I could be wrong, and if I am, let me know how. You know, let me know why you think things should stay the way they are, or if you guys think differently. In the comments below, please leave a like on the video while you're at it, and you might as well subscribe as well, because we do talk about fighting games on the channel all the time. So hey, if you like this topic, you'll probably like more of what's to come. But with that being said, that's gonna be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and hopefully I will catch y'all in the next one.